You've probably heard of the war in Gaza or the war in Ukraine, but what other large conflicts are happening in the world or are on the horizon? Welcome to Geography Insider, where today we are talking about 10 geopolitical conflicts anticipated to make headlines in 2024. This comprehensive review is anchored on the perceptive intelligence and insights from Crisis Group. The past 10 years have been marked by a significant escalation in global conflicts. Namely, these 10 to look out for in 2024. The events of the 7th of October marked a tragic turning point in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Following a Hamas-led attack and Israel's subsequent military response, the situation in Gaza has deteriorated significantly. Israel's military operations aimed at dismantling Hamas have resulted in devastating consequences. The scale of destruction and loss of civilian lives have left both Israelis and Palestinians traumatized and uncertain about the future. Despite Israel's campaign in Gaza, Hamas remains resilient, and the conflict shows no signs of abating. The international community, particularly the United States, has faced criticism for its stance on the conflict and its support for Israel. The situation in Gaza is complex, with no easy solutions in sight. While some advocate for a ceasefire and negotiations, others fear that the conflict may escalate further, leading to more suffering and loss of life. Israel-Palestine. The ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas has the potential to draw in other regional actors, including Iran and the United States. Despite neither side desiring a regional confrontation, the dynamics of the conflict could lead to unintended escalation. For Iran, the conflict offers both opportunities and challenges. While it aligns with Iran's interests by disrupting U.S.-brokered deals and showcasing the influence of its allies in the region, it also presents risks, particularly at a time when Tehran is seeking to improve relations with Washington. The most concerning flashpoint is the Israel-Lebanon border, where Hezbollah and Israel have exchanged missile fire since the start of the conflict. The potential for escalation here is high, with Hezbollah seeking to tie down Israel's military, while Israel faces public pressure to act against the group. Elsewhere, Iran-backed groups have engaged in confrontations with U.S. forces in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. The recent attacks on commercial vessels in the Red Sea further highlight the volatile nature of the situation. With Iran's nuclear ambitions looming in the background, any miscalculation or escalation could have severe consequences. While neither side desires war, the risk of unintended conflict remains high, especially with ongoing military operations in Gaza. The war in Sudan. Friction between two Sudanese military factions, the Army and the Paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, RSF, has erupted into all-out war since April. Thousands have been killed, millions displaced, and Sudan teeters on the edge of collapse. The roots of this conflict trace back to power struggles following the ousting of strongman Omar al-Bashir in 2019. The RSF, once Bashir's Praetorian Guard, and its leader Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, known as Hemeti, have emerged as key players. Talks between the RSF and the army over power sharing collapsed in mid-April, sparking violence that ravaged the capital, Khartoum, and spilled into ethnic killing in Darfur. RSF forces have seized control of key cities, including Darfur's major centers. Outside involvement adds complexity, with reports of the RSF receiving support from the UAE and the army backed by Egypt. Diplomatic efforts to broker peace have faltered, leaving Sudan's future uncertain. As the conflict intensifies, urgent diplomacy is needed to prevent Sudan's collapse, which could destabilize the entire region. The war's front, spanning 600 miles, remains deadlocked. Despite Ukraine's efforts, the Russian advance has been stalled. With fears of further Russian incursions looming, Ukraine is facing a formidable challenge. Moscow, buoyed by robust military expansion and extensive spending, believes time is on its side. President Putin has cemented his grip on power and cultivated a narrative glorifying the war as a symbol of Russian strength and tradition. Meanwhile, Ukraine braces for a harsh winter amid dwindling ammunition and wavering Western support. Discord between Ukrainian and Western officials adds to the challenges. Despite bipartisan support in the U.S. Congress, aid to Ukraine faces hurdles, with some Republicans opposing substantial assistance. Europe's response has been sluggish, marred by political obstacles. Talks with the Kremlin offer little hope of resolution as both sides remain entrenched in their positions. For Ukraine, any compromise risks political fallout, while Putin's ambitions show no signs of waning. As the conflict rages on, the stakes couldn't be higher. While negotiations continue, the need for international support for Ukraine remains paramount. Europe must step up regardless of developments in Washington. Myanmar, a country torn by conflict and upheaval. Over the past 3 years, a brutal junta has tightened its grip on power, crushing dissent and sparking widespread resistance. In 2023, a wave of resistance swept across the nation. Disparate militias born out of post-coup protests launched attacks against the military regime. The response was ruthless, with airstrikes and artillery targeting civilians. Ethnic armed groups long marginalized by the regime reacted differently to the coup. Some formed alliances with the opposition, while others remained neutral. But it was the recent offensive in the northeast that changed the game. The Three Brotherhood Alliance, bolstered by resistance forces, dealt a blow to the junta, capturing towns and severing key trade routes. Sensing opportunity, rebels across the country launched their own attacks, further stretching the military's resources. China's role in the conflict cannot be ignored. Displeased with the junta's failure to address online scams near its border, Beijing stood by as rebel forces gained ground. President Xi Jinping's distrust of the military regime has complicated matters, leading to a temporary ceasefire brokered by China. Yet amidst the chaos, Myanmar's people continue to suffer. The coup has plunged the country into turmoil, with millions displaced and essential services crumbling. While the junta may appear strong, the resistance remains resilient. The path to peace is fraught with challenges, but the people of Myanmar are determined to forge a better future. Ethiopia, a country grappling with internal strife and external tensions. The year 2023 began with hopes of peace, but ended with fears of escalating conflict. In the northernmost region of Tigray, a brutal war between federal forces and Tigrayan rebels, supported by Amhara militias and Eritrean troops, left hundreds of thousands dead and many more displaced. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed brokered a deal with Tigray's leaders, but it only ignited tensions elsewhere. In the Amhara region, rebels clashed with federal forces, resentful of Abiy's alliance with Tigray and fearing the loss of disputed territory. Meanwhile, Oromo nationalist rebels posed a threat in Abiy's home state. Amidst the turmoil, Ethiopia's economy faltered, with widespread poverty and discontent among the youth. Interethnic relations strained as regional elites resisted central authority. Adding to the complexity, tensions between Abiy and Eritrean President Isaias Afwerki simmered. Isaias, unhappy with Abiy's Tigray deal, maintained Eritrean troops on Ethiopian soil, fueling fears of further conflict. In October, Abiy's assertion of Ethiopia's right to sea access heightened tensions with Eritrea, raising concerns of military confrontation. Ethiopia stands at a crossroads, with internal divisions and external pressures threatening to plunge the nation into deeper turmoil. As Abiy grapples with multiple crises, the path to peace remains uncertain. The year 2023 marked a significant shift in the Sahel region as Niger's military ousted President Mohamed Bazoum, joining the ranks of coup-driven changes in Mali and Burkina Faso. With promises to quell the rampant violence, the new leaders have opted for familiar tactics of foreign alliances and weapon acquisitions rather than introducing innovative solutions. These coups signal a turning point in a crisis that traces back to 2012, when Tuareg rebels and jihadists captured northern Mali. Despite peace agreements in 2015, progress has been hindered by delays and disagreements, allowing jihadists to expand their influence. Despite efforts from regional armies, French forces, and UN peacekeepers, jihadists have continued their advances, fueling civilian frustration and ultimately leading to the coups. The rise of military regimes has strained international relations, with France withdrawing troops amidst growing anti-French sentiments. Mali's military leaders have turned to Russia, while Burkina Faso is seeing a growing Russian presence in an attempt to secure their power. The junta leaders have formed alliances, showing reluctance to yield to civilian governance. Despite escalating violence, the military leaders maintain popularity among the youth, tapping into sentiments of sovereignty and anti-colonialism. The approach of the new authorities mirrors past strategies, further endangering civilians caught in the crossfire. The future remains uncertain, with guerrilla warfare and internal divisions threatening stability in the region. Ultimately, lasting peace in the Sahel requires more than military force. It demands dialogue and cooperation. In Haiti, hopes are high as foreign forces prepare to tackle hyper-violent gangs ravaging the country. But the Kenyan-led mission faces daunting challenges against heavily armed gangs in dense shantytowns amidst political turmoil. Since the assassination of President Jovenel Moise in 2021, gang violence has surged, with criminals controlling much of Port-au-Prince and the Artibonite Valley. Turf wars and brutal violence have displaced tens of thousands, with nearly half of Haiti's population in need of life-saving aid. Despite past failures, Haitians support the arrival of foreign forces, desperate for change. However, the Kenya-led mission awaits approval from Kenyan courts, facing opposition challenges. With a mandate to counter gangs and improve security for elections, success hinges on urban combat readiness and political stability. Yet political divisions and power struggles could derail efforts, risking further chaos and delaying much-needed reforms. Last year, Azerbaijan's swift military campaign in Nagorno-Karabakh led to the displacement of over 100,000 people, raising concerns about further escalation. Now, the focus shifts to whether Azerbaijan and Armenia can find a path to peace, following tentative progress in late 2023 negotiations. Decades of conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh, with its ethnic Armenian majority, have plagued the region since the 1990s. Despite previous stalemates, Azerbaijan's military buildup and strategic maneuvers, backed by Turkey, shifted the balance in the 2020 war. With tensions simmering along the undemarcated border clashes have intensified, overshadowing efforts for peace. Yet recent bilateral talks offer a glimmer of hope, with agreements on prisoner exchanges and pledges to normalize relations. However, unresolved border and corridor disputes loom large, risking renewed hostilities if negotiations falter. While prospects for peace remain, the specter of further conflict looms, underscoring the delicate balance in the region. Last of the list, we have the tensions between U.S. and China. A recent summit between U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping aimed to ease tensions, but key issues in the Asia-Pacific region could strain the fragile détente. Despite efforts to de-escalate, core interests clash, especially concerning Taiwan's elections and tensions in the South China Sea. Both Beijing and Washington seek to lower tensions for different reasons. Xi aims to stabilize the Chinese economy, while Biden seeks a calm environment ahead of the 2024 U.S. elections. While diplomatic efforts stalled after a spy balloon incident, the Biden-Xi summit yielded agreements on combating fentanyl and climate change, along with a reopening of military communication channels. However, underlying rivalry persists, with hawks viewing competition as zero-sum, and talks of war becoming normalized. Tensions escalate in the South China Sea, where Chinese maritime claims clash with those of neighboring states like the Philippines, a U.S. ally. As Taiwanese elections loom and military encounters between China and the U.S. rise, the risk of a catastrophic collision remains a pressing concern. In addition, China has bolstered their international development significantly in recent years, with major projects such as their Belt and Road Initiative or Egypt's new administrative capital. Victory can be a dangerous thing. How does it threaten to escalate conflicts even further? In the world of conflict and warfare, victories can often serve as a double-edged sword. They can bring about a sense of resolution, a momentary pause in the chaos. But they can also embolden leaders, giving them a taste for triumph that can lead to further escalation of conflicts, pushing the boundaries far beyond their borders. Consider this: a leader secures a military victory. It not only strengthens their position domestically, but it can also bolster their confidence on the international stage. This heightened confidence can sometimes lead to a more aggressive stance, a desire to push for more victories, to extend their sphere of influence, to assert their dominance. This is a growing concern in our world today. Leaders, intoxicated by their victories, can become reckless, taking risks that can have far-reaching consequences. They can miscalculate, underestimate the response of their adversaries, or overestimate their own capabilities. This can lead to an escalation of conflicts, from localized skirmishes to full-blown wars that can engulf entire regions. Moreover, these escalated conflicts can have serious implications for the global community. They can disrupt trade routes, lead to humanitarian crises, and create power vacuums that can be exploited by extremist groups. They can strain diplomatic relations, making conflict resolution even more challenging. Victories, while they may bring temporary relief or a sense of achievement, can also set the stage for a cycle of violence that can be difficult to break. They can create a dangerous momentum, a push towards more conflict, more violence, more destruction. The thirst for more victories, then, can lead to an even greater threat of conflict. It's a risk that the world can't afford to ignore. As we navigate these turbulent times, it's crucial that we keep a close eye on these victorious leaders, that we understand the potential risk they pose, and that we work towards solutions that can prevent this dangerous escalation of conflicts. The thirst for more victories can lead to an even greater threat of conflict. Our exploration took us through the turbulent waves of international conflict, beginning with the escalation of global warfare since 2012. We've seen the devastation unfold in Gaza, Sudan, and Ukraine, and the diplomatic efforts that have unfortunately fallen short. The marked increase in conflicts throughout many regions and has painted a stark picture of our world's current state. If you liked the information in this video, please leave a like and subscribe to Geography Insider for more on countries, conflicts, and cultures.